What is up, everyone? Today we are going to break down UFC London from a DraftKings DFS perspective. This week's card being headlined by Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady in the welterweight division. Made it through weigh-ins, no cancellations. Everything looks good to go. We have a full 13-fight card. And without further ado, we'll get started with Christian Leroy Duncan versus Andre Pulyaev. This should be a squash matchup. Leroy Duncan definitely is the better fighter, the more well-rounded fighter, the more powerful fighter. He's a big 5-1 favorite, all the way up at $9,600 on DraftKings, and I think he's deserving of the price. You see, he has the best round one line on the entire slate, plus 175, and minus 200 to win ITD. Um, it's all going to depend on how this runs out. We've seen many times the knockdown variance, the round one to round two variance can be huge. If you get a late round one finish with a knockdown and all the volume that you already got throughout the first 4 minutes of round one, that's a 110. But if you get that same exact finish, early round two, no knockdown, that's 95, 100, right? So, I mean, am I going to try to predict the variance of when this finish comes? Early round one, late round one, knockdown, no knockdown. No, I'm not going to try to guess all of that. I'm just going to say he's a great play. I think he's a perfectly fine spend up, and he's deserving of the chalk. Only concern I can think of is that he is primarily a striker. Now, I wouldn't call him a pure striker, but he's a strike first fighter. And if this somehow gets dragged out to a decision, there's just almost no way that he's getting there at 9,600. But again, that's not going to happen that often. And I think it's something you don't have to really worry about this week. On the other side, Pulyaev, you're going to be getting leverage because Duncan will be very popular. But Pulyev's just not winning that often. And even if he wins, I don't think he has a ton of finishing upside. Like, Leroy Duncan is durable. So, yeah, I don't know. I think this Pulyaev play definitely wouldn't play it in anything below 20 or 50 lineups. It's an extremely fringy play. Next up, Kutateladze versus Fernandes. This is probably a pass fight. Guram coming in as a big favorite. He's the more well-rounded fighter, the more skilled fighter, but he typically doesn't separate and he typically doesn't finish people. And that is not what you want to see at 9,400. So I think he's a very weak spend up here. And then Fernandes, the one thing I can say positive about him is that if he wins this fight, I think it will come by finish. Again, I just can't imagine him being the minute winner in this matchup. So his wins will probably come by way of knockout or some weird submission. So he has upside in his wins. I think that's true, but you're not going to get leverage off of Guram. So another play that's just a very fringy MME play. And he's not winning that often. I mean, he's 3-1, so pretty gross play. Okay. Next up, we have Jordan Vucenic versus Chris Duncan. Jordan Vucenic is probably the best overall play on the slate. Win odds, price, and finishing metrics, and grappling upside. He has really everything you're looking for at a $9,300 price tag. I think he's playable in all contest types. The one thing I'll say is that if you're Jordan Vucenic, you should come out here and look to grapple. You are the better striker than Chris Duncan. You are the better fighter than Chris Duncan. But the more time you spend on the feet, the more chances you're going to give him to knock you out. And if there's one thing I can say about Chris Duncan is that he has knockout power, especially if you hurt him. That's when he's actually the most dangerous. You think he's hurt, you start charging him, you start getting reckless, Chris Duncan will put you out. So that is a concern. That's probably how I see Vucenic losing the fight. If he does lose, it's because he maybe wobbles Chris early and then gets too aggressive, and Duncan's able to find a knockout. I don't see it being a likely outcome, and I think Vucenic should be fine here. I'll have both fighters, though. I do think out of the punts we've discussed so far, I would rather play Duncan over Fernandes or Pulyaev. Duncan, he has the upside that I want, and he's also going up against a very popular fighter in Vucenic. So kind of the first real punt I would consider in Chris Duncan. And I like both sides of this fight. Preference towards Jordan Vucenic. Okay. Next up, we have Loughran Kavanaugh versus Felipe dos Santos. Another fight I don't think will be all that relevant in DFS. Loughran Kavanaugh, not great finishing metrics to say the least, plus 225. Felipe dos Santos, same thing. I guess I would rather play Felipe dos Santos because of pricing. He is high volume. He is very active. Yeah, but Loughran Kavanaugh is very good at controlling the pace of a fight. So I don't really know about this whole thing. It's just it's going to be a low owned fight. And do I have an opinion that someone's going to finish? No, I don't. And is there much grappling upside on either side? I mean, Felipe dos Santos, he's the better jiu-jitsu fighter, but he doesn't have great takedowns to get it there. And if Loughran wants to take Felipe down, he could, but I don't know if he'd want to do that because you're going into dos Santos' jiu-jitsu skill set. Yeah, so I mean, this fight's probably close to a pass. If I have to choose a side, I guess I prefer dos Santos just because of pricing, but not a ton of interest there. Moving on, we have Carlos Ulberg, Jan Blachowicz. Okay, so Jan Blachowicz, veteran of the light heavyweight division, he's competed against the best. Draw to Ankalaev, the current champ. Coin flip, split decision loss to Alex Pereira, the former champ. Wins over Dominic Reyes, wins over Israel Adesanya. He's the much more credentialed fighter. But the problem is he's coming off of a 2-year layoff, I believe, and a double shoulder surgery or something along those lines. And he's 42 years old. So this is the classic career trajectory fight where Ulberg, prime for prime, I don't think Ulberg is the better fighter than Blachowicz, but at the time he's fighting him, he very well could be. And another thing to mention is that the UFC needs a light heavyweight contender. Like there's the Alex Pereira Ankalaev rematch that is rumored to happen, and then outside of that, there's literally no contender in this division. And Ulberg is the only guy that's on the outside looking for a title shot, and this win is what will give him that. So I do think there's, if we get a greasy decision, I do believe it. Ulberg probably has the judging upside, just because he's the fresher, newer contender, whereas Jan's already fought all these guys, and he's 42 years old. Getting back to the DFS side of this fight, Jan Blachowicz, it's light heavyweight. He has knockout power, but he doesn't really do that all too often. The other thing Jan Blachowicz has is grappling upside. We saw him do it to Alex Pereira, came in there with a phenomenal game plan and wrestled him and had a lot of success. Again, that fight was extremely, extremely close. So could he come in here with a wrestling heavy game plan against the pure kickboxer in Ulberg? Yes, and that could score well if Blachowicz wins. So I do think Blachowicz has the wrestling upside. But if this fight takes place on the feet, I really do think it'll just be, tit for tat, striking, kicking, not a lot going on. And as far as Ulberg's upside goes, he's as close as you get to a pure striker. And he's plus 165 IATD. That's not very good for a 9K pure striker. So yeah, I don't know about this fight, man. I think the most likely outcome is Ulberg wins a competitive decision. I just haven't seen Blachowicz get blown out by anybody in a long, long time. If he's completely washed, which he could be, then maybe Ulberg can finish him. But I'm gonna say that Blachowicz shows up, puts on a crafty vet performance, loses, but not by a large margin. And I think both sides of this fight probably bust in DFS. But if I had to place, this is just tough. I could talk about this fight forever, so we'll just move on. I'll say Ulberg is the preferred slide, just barely. And we'll move on to Thainera versus Molly McCann. Okay, so Molly McCann, the hometown fighter, a bit of mixed success in the UFC lately. A lot of losses, especially in her hometown. Listen, I've been here for a few years. I remember people were willing to lay 4-1, 3-1 on Molly McCann in similar matchups to this one, not too long ago. And now McCann is plus 210 versus a Brazilian coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series, making her UFC debut, enemy territory. I don't know about this, man. I don't know about laying for the betting market. I would not lay 240 on Thainera. I think that McCann's probably the side as far as that goes. But getting back to DFS, McCann, low price, will have the crowd going for her. Will come out and I know McCann will fight. Like that's one thing. She's not a quitter. She's not a pushover. So I know McCann will fight. I know she'll put up volume. I know she'll look to finish the fight. She's one of these rare women's MMA fighters that actually tries to finish fights. Very entertaining fighter, and I like her as the DFS side. I hear a lot of love for Thainera as well. 8,900. The idea being that Molly, her past losses are coming by way of better wrestlers and grapplers than her. Stolyarenko subbed in round 1. Blanchfield subbed in round 1. Bruna Brazil, she kind of got outclassed on the feet in moments of that fight, but also in the takedowns. So people are seeing that and they're thinking that Thainera can have a big grappling edge. It's possible. It's possible that happens, but I don't know. I think the jury's still out on Thainera. Plus 200 ITD. It's just I'm not really a big fan of this Thainera play, to be completely honest. If she comes out here and completely outgrapples Molly, then I would be surprised if she runs through Molly this weekend. So I'll say that Molly is the preferred side for me. And I need to see more on Thainera for me to really be confident in her to win and dominate in this spot. Next up, Shauna Bannon versus Pusha Tomar. This is probably as close to a pass fight as you can get. You got striker versus striker, almost no finishing upside on either side. If there is a grappling upside to be had, it's on the Shauna Bannon side. But you're really taking a leap of faith. You're hoping for like a trip, and Shauna Bannon gets on top. It's not very likely that Shauna dominates in the grappling here. But I'm just saying, if there is a side, I think it would be her. And Tomar is, maybe she wins, right? 7,400, but I don't see her having upside. I mean, 70 points. I imagine her wins will look something similar to that. So, yeah, not a fan of this fight in DFS. Next up, Morgan Charriere versus Nathaniel Wood. Morgan Charriere, French kickboxer, very durable, a lot of power in his hands, but he has the same problems that most French fighters do, and that is that they're low volume and they do not let their hands go. So this could be a minutes versus moments matchup. Nathaniel Wood, I think he'll be the higher volume fighter. I think he'll be the minute winner. But Morgan Charriere, all it takes is one big moment. Nathaniel Wood's durability is very questionable, to say the least. He gets dropped in every other fight, I feel like. And, if it's a close round and Morgan Charriere is landing the harder shots, wobbling Nathaniel Wood, knocking him down, that round's going to Morgan Charriere. Nathaniel Wood, I mean, in his wins, you're looking at maybe mixing in the grappling, 85 points, 80 points, nothing special, but he is an underdog, so you don't need, 110 out of him. And Morgan Charriere, he could find a finish, but is he that likely to do it? I mean, let's see. Plus 215. I guess it's okay. So I prefer the Charriere side just slightly, and I hope that he comes out here aggressive. If not, this fight's probably going to be a dud on both sides. And I think the most likely outcome is Charriere by a competitive decision. Moving on to the main event, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. I've been going back and forth on this all week. I think it's a very tough fight to predict. If you just watch each of their last fights, you're going to see that Bilal came in here, pressured Leon, took him down. The blueprint that we've seen beat Leon time and time again. Bilal implemented it to a T, won that fight as a huge underdog. And Sean Brady came in and fought Gilbert Burns and pretty much beat Gilbert Burns the same way that Bilal beat Leon Edwards. So if you're watching both of their last fights, you're going to be like, it's going to be an easy pick for Sean Brady. But if you look a little bit deeper into their careers, their prior fights, I don't know if it's that easy. Leon, for all of his flaws, I think he's the much more talented fighter. He's the much more powerful fighter. And I do not think that Sean Brady will be comfortable on the feet if he's not able to get takedowns. So, just to keep this short, I think it's a binary fight. I think both fighters have finishing upside. Sean Brady, he's almost a theoretical lock in DFS. Like, if he wins, it's going to be 5 rounds or less of grappling, control, total strikes, and finish, or 5 rounds of that in a decision. So he's going to score through the roof in his wins. It's a pretty easy play to identify, and he'll be the highest owned for good reason. But Leon Edwards, I usually would identify him as where fantasy points go to die. But I think in this matchup, you're going to get so much leverage over Brady. And how do you beat a relentless wrestler? Like, either Brady's going to succeed and win this fight and probably dominate this fight. But if he doesn't, it's going to be because Edwards is able to stop him. And how do you stop that pressure and that relentless wrestling? By a finish, by a knockout. So I do think that Leon has the potential to find a knockout here. And with all the leverage he'll provide it, I think he's an extremely strong play. Brady obviously is as well. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pick Leon by round 3 TKO. Very low confidence, but that's what I see happening in this fight. Next up, we have Gunnar Nelson, Kevin Holland. Another binary fight. Gunnar Nelson going to be going for the takedowns and looking to find a submission. Kevin Holland wants to keep the fight on the feet and outpoint Nelson to a decision or find a knockout. I like both sides. No real preference. Moving on to Nathan Fletcher, Colin Loughran. Wrestler versus wrestler. Both guys can offensively wrestle, but the guy who has all of the jiu-jitsu upside is Nathan Fletcher. He's the much more active finisher. He's looking for submissions, whereas Loughran's more so looking for control. And on the feet, Loughran definitely has the power upside. So, yeah, I mean, interesting fight here. I don't think there's a finish. And if there's not a finish, I guess both sides look okay, right? At the end of the day, I think both sides look okay. I'm going to say slight preference towards Fletcher because if he is able to get things going, get his own takedowns, and find a submission, he's going to put up a really big score, and I think he'll be pretty low owned here in this range. People will go to Tybura. People will go to Gunnar Nelson. I think he'll kind of get overlooked. So I'll say Fletcher is the side just slightly, but a pretty mediocre fight in DFS. Next up, Jai Herbert versus Chris Padilla. Pick'em fight. Jai Herbert, typically where fantasy points go to die. He's a low-volume kickboxer. Chris Padilla burst onto the scene, got that crazy upset win over James Yontop as a plus 400 underdog on short notice, and then beat Ron Zhu by second round TKO. I don't want to say it was a controversial stoppage. Like, he elbowed Ron Zhu, and Ron Zhu's eye completely swelled up and he couldn't see. So Padilla caused the damage, right? So I can't say it was a fluke, but it was a bit of a weird outcome, Padilla, I think the jury's still out on him in the UFC. And this is a spot to prove himself against a guy like Jai Herbert, who's your run-of-the-mill fighter. I don't think there's a large ceiling for him in the sport, but I see this fight playing out closely. I think that, honestly, I don't love either side. Padilla has the grappling upside, probably the finishing upside, but the most likely outcome, I think, is a competitive decision here where both sides don't score all that well. And I took a glance at ownerships, and Chris Padilla was getting a lot of steam. I think he was like upwards of 30%, which was very surprising to me. I think this fight's probably a pass, if I had to say. And I don't know if I agree with 30-40% Padilla. That seems like it's a bit high. So I'll say that Jai Herbert is like a gross leverage play. He'll be like 10% owned. And maybe you can do it. Probably not in your 20 lamps or below. But overall, I think this fight is pretty weak. And then last but not least, Marcin Tybura versus Mick Parkin. Mick Parkin taking some steam now. Become the favorite at 8K. McParkin has the knockout upside. Tybura has all the grappling and the ground and pound upside. It's a typical mid-range fight, 8K, 8,200, two heavyweights, so you could be looking at a low-scoring, sloppy decision. That's always a concern, especially for McParkin, who doesn't have the grappling upside in this matchup. I'm going to lean slightly towards Tybura, getting the takedowns, getting some ground and pound, potentially finding the finish, but I think the most likely outcome is Tybura winning a decision through the grappling, and a competitive decision at that. And McParkin, I think, is. I mean, if you, what is? Let's just take a look here. McParkin, 8K, the favorite, and plus 250 ITD. I mean, that's right on the fringe of where I'd want it to be. Yeah, I guess this fight is okay, right? So Tybura is going to be my preferred side, and I think that McParkin is kind of just a fill-in play. That's going to do it. Thank you guys for watching. As always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment, and best of luck, everyone.